Good morning, Scale. So, everybody ready for some privacy tips that will protect your privacy? Well, I got some bad news for you. The thing is, privacy tools are not actually going to protect your privacy. Unfortunately, most of the stuff you can do for privacy, unusual. It stands out. It makes you fingerprintable. The more of a privacy nerd you are, the more uniquely recognizable you are. Another problem, privacy tools affect the technology that you control. Privacy tools work on the hardware that you install them on or the services that you opt for. Privacy tools can't reach out and interfere with violations of your privacy that happen out of band between companies trading on your info. Privacy laws are there, but a lot of companies don't even comply with them. Companies will openly defy privacy laws, claiming that they're too confusing, or saying that it's a better risk to go ahead and violate privacy because the enforcement budgets for the regulators are small, and the fines are less than the anticipated gain from the privacy violation. And then finally, privacy tools just take a lot of time, and the more you protect your privacy, the more of the crappy ads that you get, because you're not getting the ads that are targeted for the people with some known good quality. So, I hate to break it to you, but we are not going to, just using privacy tools, be able to get you to an acceptable level of privacy. But I'm going to share some privacy tips with you anyway. I'm going to explain how we can use privacy tools not just as a protection here and there for one individual, but as part of a comprehensive transformation that will improve privacy for everyone. Realistically, privacy cannot be personal. If you're the only person with privacy, you're definitely identifiable. Privacy has to be a collective project. And before anybody asks, am I here to argue the pro-privacy point of view or the pro-business point of view? The answer is yes. Privacy and economic growth are not adversarial positions. Privacy is essential to legitimate business for two important reasons. First, investments in privacy, investments in surveillance that violates privacy compete directly with investments in product innovation. We're seeing this right now with mobile games, which is kind of like the fast-moving laboratory for privacy and user data markets, where lower trackability in mobile games leads to investments in gameplay and in-play content. So more surveillance means less investment by VCs, CMOs, and other decision makers into actual products you can use. The second area where privacy interests and business interests are aligned is that privacy violations facilitate scam culture. A scam culture society is a low-trust society, and growth and cooperation depend on a higher level of trust within the economy as a whole. All right, so on to the privacy tips. Number one priority, fixing YouTube. How many people have gone down a YouTube rat hole? Yes, YouTube starts promoting some pretty disturbing stuff if you let it go. You go to watch videos of someone playing a tank battle game, then you get drawn into World War II history. Then you get drawn into alternate perspectives on World War II history, and it gets real dark real fast. I don't know how many follow the Supreme Court, but there's been a Supreme Court case argued last month where YouTube videos recruited people into ISIS, the terrorist organization. So YouTube also had one of their biggest stars just arrested in Romania for human trafficking. So the recommendation algorithm to YouTube is pretty scary. And of course, the presence of advertising on YouTube takes away some of the ad money that could have gone to support legit content. But unfortunately, there are a lot of videos on YouTube that people end up having to watch for school, for work. I see school assignments coming in with, watch this thing on YouTube. Or I get email from, in this case, Doc Searles saying, hey, I interviewed you and it's up on YouTube. So it's unrealistic to say don't use YouTube, but at the same time, you don't want to feed into the surveillance economy and the terrorist economy. So what do? We have to install 2 browser extensions. The first one is called multi-account containers. And what multi-account containers does is it will break your Firefox user data into separate isolated parts. So if you're in one container that you reserve for, say, shopping, and you save your credit cards in there, then you open up a site in a different container, then your credit cards won't be auto-filled. Or if there's a cookie set by one site saying, hey, come back and check out your shopping cart, then that won't show up in another container. So it's a really handy extension to have. And what I do with it is go to Manage Containers. I make a new container. In this case, I'm labeling it YouTube. And then open up any YouTube video. I would suggest open up one of the scale videos. And then go to the multi-account containers extension and select always open this site in container. So now you've got YouTube in a completely separate browser container from any other activity that you have with any other site. And this way you can still subscribe to channels on YouTube. You can still preserve your position within videos in YouTube, but you're not leaking that information across to other sites. And when we talk about how the surveillance marketing business works, we'll understand more about why this is important. This is called multi-account containers. So I will put up notes for this talk after scale, and I'll include links to all these tools. So once you've got your multi-account containers going, there's one more extension you need to drop in, and that is called Enhancer for YouTube. And Enhancer for YouTube is the answer to YouTube growth hacking. It will let you turn off autoplay so you don't see yet another semi-related video after the video you came to watch. It will let you turn off recommended videos. It will let you turn off comments. So you can start using YouTube for just what you need to do, like somebody sends you a link for work or a link for school, but it doesn't turn into a YouTube rat hole. So that's a big saving feature. There's a bunch of stuff in this extension, enhancer for YouTube, and I would suggest playing with it a little bit. I do suggest turning on theater mode, because once you get rid of the recommended videos that show up over to the right of the video you're actually watching, then there's a blank space, and you might as well fill in the whole video on the screen. So that is a big time saver, and we'll come back to understanding a little bit more about how surveillance marketing works to understand how this is an important measure that helps us. Yes, if there's a question, please wait for the microphone. We have a microphone, an audience microphone. Can you raise your hand again so that we can get the microphone to you?
Yeah, this way your question gets added to the stream.
Yeah, just one quick question. Does this extension only work under Firefox, or are there extensions for Google Chrome or Edge?
This combination of extensions works on Firefox. Enhancer for YouTube is available for more browsers. You can't get the full container experience without Firefox, but you can get part of the protection on other browsers for now.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
All right, so if people are getting tired of these privacy talks and random privacy nerd tip talks from me, there's some good news, because I haven't been putting the garlic in my ears, so it could be the end of me any day now. The big problem that we need to worry about with privacy is that it's not so much a single set of privacy issues or intrusions or vulnerabilities. It's not like an internet security problem where you've got a lot of random actors coming along and trying to violate your security. It's more a part of a bigger set of problems in the economy. And that is essentially a problem of two big scams. The first big scam is ad targeting allows advertisers to pay more money per person to reach fewer people, the people who are actively in market for the item that they're selling. So an ideal ad targeting system would reach only the auto intenders with the car ads, as in the people who have the money and interest to buy a car, and the rest of the ad slots go unfilled, while the ad slots targeting the car people get filled with much higher priced ads going that are more likely to sell a car. And the surveillance marketing people point to this and say, isn't it great? It's efficient. Isn't it so efficient? The problem is, what happens to all those unfilled ad impressions? And web advertising, and especially social media advertising, is based on an auction process where advertisers bid on the opportunity to show an ad to a particular person at a particular time. When the honest advertisers all run off to the younger, richer, and hotter users, that leaves a bunch of unfilled ad slots that go to people who can be convinced to put garlic in their ears. The second big scam that feeds into our privacy problems is tricking advertisers into brand unsafe placements. There's a lot of websites out there that are just plain scraping content from legit sites and then sneaking ads onto them. The easiest way to make a website that can show a whole lot of ads is show the user an entire pirated movie along with an ad banner and refresh the ad banner every few seconds. That makes bank. So the advertisers are being cheated out of their opportunity to place their ads in a high reputation context. And the decisions by the technology companies to deceive the advertisers have as their side effect a privacy violation on the regular users. So some startup founders come up to me and say, hey, we've got this great idea for a startup. It will allow users to control their own data and monetize it. Well, that data doesn't have value to the users. That data only has value temporarily for purposes of reaching a known good user on a less trustworthy site. So I would encourage everyone to read Professor Cottom's piece on scam culture and the transformation of business norms to tolerate more scams in more places. From buying a gallon of milk to making a dinner reservation, all the way up the chain to electoral malfeasance, so many of our interactions feel weighted away from social connection in favor of extracting every ounce of unfair advantage from every single human activity. Not to overstate it, but a pluralistic democracy simply cannot function when most of its citizens cannot trust that the arrangements that they rely on to meet their basic needs are roughly fair. And Professor Cottom is talking about the impact of scams on democracy, but the impact of scams and surveillance on the market is just as great. You cannot have a sustainable market that's based on one-sided information flows. Lower trust lowers efficiency and productivity for everyone. All right, on to another privacy tip. How many have been following the movement to ban TikTok? Yes, several states, several European countries have come through with bills and or regulations to say, no more TikTok in our state or on our publicly owned devices, in our schools, whatever. Well, I hate to break it to you, but that's only a tiny partial ban of TikTok. TikTok has a software component called the TikTok SDK that can be built into all kinds of apps, retail apps, games, whatever. And it does all the same tracking of you as a user that TikTok does. So somebody might pull out their mobile phone and say, oh, I don't want to be tracked by TikTok. Click on TikTok, delete it. Well, they're still tracked by TikTok because they've still got a bunch of games on their phones that have that SDK in there. And this is not just a problem for that one tracking SDK, but there are tracking SDKs for all the other social media in all the other mobile apps. So if you are worried about China, then you're going to say, whoa, ban TikTok. If you're worried about the sovereign wealth fund of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, you might be concerned about Twitter. Either way, mobile apps have tracking SDKs in them. So what I don't want to encourage people to do is eliminate all social apps from their life, because having some social app connection is good for you. So if your family member says, oh, I only know how to use such and such tracking social app, then I mean, spend some of your personal privacy risk budget on that one app and then delete a couple of games with hinky tracking SDKs to make up for it. In general, you've got to try to keep the number of mobile apps down because they're in their own space that we can't do privacy stuff with the way that we can do with the browser. So, can you wait for the mic just a minute? Yeah, if you have a question, raise your hand and wait for the mic.
So how exactly would you be tracking which apps have which SDKs, in this case, the tracking SDKs?
That would be an enormous time suck. Apps do new releases all the time and add and remove SDKs. So in general, if an SDK is out there and popular, then apps are going to update to have that SDK put into them, and you're gonna end up with a tracking SDK.
Shouldn't Google have a responsibility for these apps considering they're in their actual app store?
All right, that would be a much better world to live in. I think we need to go back to the idea of scam culture, and yes, it would be appropriate if very large businesses had the kind of tolerance, or had only the level of tolerance for dishonest activity that small businesses do. So if you walked into your neighborhood hardware store and found that some evil infiltrator from North Korea had reverse shoplifted a bunch of surveillance devices onto the plumbing supplies shelf, then your local hardware store would take the time to have somebody take those physically out of the store, right? There's a level of business norms around respecting the interests of customers that we expect from human scale businesses. And when very large businesses grow to the point where they can hide scam culture, then that leads to the kind of problems that we're talking about. So yes, it would be good if business norms around protecting customers were widely held. And I think we can get closer to that kind of a world by pushing on some of the privacy buttons and levers that we have available to us, but that's not the world we have now.
I feel we just need to demand it as consumers, right? Because we're the actual customers that are buying their products. And if we kind of just said, hey, we're not going to be buying these products, or we're going to go with this other, competitor because they actually have more of our best interest and, in line, then that's basically the way we get our message across.
That's a very good idea, and please stick around for like 12 more minutes. All right. Oh, one more question. Yes.
Can you help me understand what advantage it gives a developer to use TikTok's SDK, or I'm assuming there's one from developed by Facebook and one by
All right.
Twitter
Well,
at all.
let's say you have a hotel app, the White Lotus app, and you also have a social media marketing team that is making all these cool TikTok videos about all the fun in the sun at the White Lotus. So as a marketing professional, you're going to want to know, how well did our TikTok videos pay off? So when we hired marketing people to make all these fun in the sun videos and put them on TikTok, did that turn into guests installing the White Lotus app so that they can order drinks and unlock their rooms or whatever all else? So it's all about allocating money to marketing on TikTok versus other places that money can be spent. All right, let's continue. So I would encourage everybody, take a look at your phone. Apps tend to build up. Get rid of the ones that you aren't actively using. All right. I don't want this to turn into a privacy dystopia talk because privacy is actually now on the way up. Last year, the Attorney General in the state of California did a $1.2 million settlement with Sephora, the big luxury cosmetics vendor. And that was a really interesting case because all the stuff that Sephora was doing is widely done across the retail business. So the attention of regulators to privacy violations is at an all-time high. Also, the California Privacy Protection Agency, the new agency that's going to be enforcing California's privacy rights, is just getting started. And this is a picture of me experimentally exercising California privacy rights. So when the original California privacy law came in, there was not a lot of good implementations of how to exercise your privacy rights. You couldn't just fill out a web form and create some and change your privacy settings. There was a lot of broken stuff, people ignoring you. So when Consumer Reports printed out a big stack of legal documents and sent it to one of the big data brokers, they changed dramatically what they did. And what we found out with the Sephora case is most companies don't really have somebody who understands privacy law. They are just as mystified by this as the average person, and they know far less about their responsibilities under the law than the average privacy person does. We've got this kind of mythical idea of the all-seeing, all-knowing magic algorithms, but really it's just a bunch of marketing people looking at a dashboard and saying, hey, why did my graph go like this? So the surveillance marketing business is, in many cases, more scared of us than we are of them. They are willing to take steps to comply with their obligations under CCPA and other privacy laws, and this is our opportunity to train marketing people to do the right thing. Remember, surveillance investments compete directly with investments in product innovation and with the kind of investments in efficiency that can lower prices. If they see stuff like this, stacks of legal documents coming in, questions on their privacy at email address from people who act like they know what they're doing, that increases the perceived risk of surveillance investments. It lowers the perceived or predicted ROI of surveillance investments and tends to drive investment into product innovation, process improvement, content, all the stuff we want. All right. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. This is a pretty basic tip, but check your mobile phone settings. On Apple iOS, there are two privacy settings. There's one called Privacy and Security, Tracking, Allow Apps to Request to Track. That's the obvious one. Pretty much everybody who sees that one turns it off. If you go to that screen and scroll down a little bit more, in Settings, Privacy and Security, Apple advertising, there's another setting called personalized ads. Most people don't see, a lot of people ignore. So you have to turn off both the everybody else's surveillance ads setting and the surveillance ads from Apple setting. So that's a little sneaky thing that you need to work around. On Android, there's settings, privacy, delete advertising ID, and I'll put in a link to that tip. Now, you will start seeing crappier ads on mobile if you turn on your privacy settings. But I actually kind of like that because it discourages you from spending too much time on mobile. When you wake up in the morning and check your phone and it's the before picture from the ointment ad, you can break some of your bad phone habits real quick. So in general, just think about trying to herd some of the marketing money away from the worst places that it can possibly go. Surveillance capitalism is really, really good at claiming credit for sales, so you have to kind of deprive them of the data that they need to come back to the CEO and say, hey, look at all these people we tracked and they bought our stuff. You should give us some more money for more tracking. You have to cut off that flow of data as much as possible so that somebody else who comes into the CEO and says, hey, we want to make our product better. The CEO will say, yeah, I'll give you the money, and the surveillance stuff, I'm not sure if it's working very well. So we got to think about moving that money away from surveillance and into non-surveillance things. All right, this is a tough one. How many people are using Google Chrome as your regular web browser, not just for testing websites? Okay. All right. How many know about Manifest v3 in Google Chrome? Okay. So Google Chrome, of course, allows for browser extensions, like all the other major browsers. There's a new change to the API between the browser and its extensions called Manifest v3. Now, Manifest v3 has some positive aspects to it. Manifest v3 will protect users who install one of those many sketchy extensions that live in the Google Play Store. But it also limits what a content filtering extension can do in the browser. So you're going to see privacy tools in Google Chrome being less full-featured than in other browsers. So I don't want to say go home and get rid of all your Google Chrome instantly, but it's helpful to have a plan to get yourself onto a browser that's not tied to that Manifest v3 path. There is also another, oh, yes, wait for the mic, please.
Does Manifest v3 affect other browsers that are built on Chromium?
Yes, but other browsers may be able to build in some of the features that are enabled for Chromium, for Google Chrome enterprise releases. So if you get an enterprise release of Google Chrome, for some period of time, you're going to continue to be able to get the advanced content blocking because there are a lot of enterprise-focused privacy and security extensions that use it. So if you use a non-Chrome, Chromium-based browser, you need to check that browser's development forum for what they're doing about the Manifest v3 problem. All right, and the other reason this is a big year for Google Chrome is that there is a sustained process to enable Google to turn off the third-party cookies in Google Chrome. And the reason that this is such a dramatic issue is that Google is both a company that releases a browser and an ad tech company. So because a change in the cookie properties of the browser would affect competing ad tech firms, the competition regulators are scrutinizing Google's choices to turn off third-party cookies in Google Chrome. So right now, every cookie-related change in Google Chrome has to go through the Competition and Markets Authority in the UK. And that regulator has obtained a signed set of commitments from Google not to turn off the third-party cookies until they put in something to replace them that will somehow help out the remaining ad tech people. And that's tricky. Third-party cookies are used for an incredible amount of stuff in web advertising, and the attempts by Google and some other companies to come up with a replacement are moving along, and in some cases fairly well, and in other cases running into snags. I absolutely do not envy the position that the Google Chrome developers are in. They have a very tricky set of problems. The first one is they have to catch up with the other browsers on meeting users' privacy expectations. The other browsers have already gotten rid of third-party cookies. The other problem they have is they have to make the antitrust regulators happy. So CMA is going to sign off on whatever comes into Google Chrome to replace the third-party cookies. And then finally, a lot of Google's ad revenue depends on monetizing content on which no reasonable advertiser would choose to appear. Pirate sites, terrorist sites, whatever all else. And all those sites are only worthwhile. They're only able to make money for Google because of the third-party cookie today. So whatever they end up coming up with is going to have to address all three of those concerns. And realistically, they're not going to be able to make everybody happy. So if you're on Google Chrome, there's a lot of politics happening right now. So this is, if you're on Google Chrome, check this. Under Chrome settings, ad privacy interests, there's this thing called ad topics. And this is Topics API, a general purpose system for sharing information about your interests from one site to another. So basically you visit one site and the classifier within Google Chrome gets trained on the domain name of that site. Later on, you visit another site that happens to have a third-party script from the same company, and your interest in the first site may be revealed to the second site. So this is not just an ad thing. They say topics of interest are based on your recent browsing history and are used by sites to show you personalized ads. There's no way they can guarantee that. There is a bunch of potential stuff that can be done with one site based on information from another site. So if you have Google Chrome, this is an experimental feature. Find it, Chrome settings, add privacy interests, and turn it off. All right, back to our first tech tip, the YouTube problem. And why is it so important for us to break out our usage of YouTube from our other internet activity? Well, this is an extremely simplified view of the surveillance marketing cycle. So you go buy stuff. The fact that you bought that stuff is somehow reported to the surveillance marketing organization. Based on that data, they select targets for more advertising. Based on which targets they're going after, there's an automated system that places an ad in a particular place. The ad may or may not lead to you actually buying stuff. That's the question mark. That's what they're trying to measure. The placement of the ad is somehow reported back to the surveillance marketing organization. And they keep using this, roughly this cycle to estimate how well the surveillance advertising is doing at selling you stuff. And in some cases, if it's an ad that you directly click on and immediately buy the thing, then this chain is very simplified. In other cases where you might get shown an ad, but then multiple things could have led to you buying what you bought, then the measuring effectiveness becomes a lot more complicated. So when we think about what privacy tools we apply, we can think about which link in this chain do we want to disrupt. So in the case of YouTube, well, we can break this link right here, ad reporting to measuring effectiveness, because you, as seen by YouTube, are different from you as seen by the place where you bought stuff. Some of our other privacy measures will be able to break the link between the buying stuff and the measuring effectiveness. So even if they manage to get a report on, we showed you a particular ad, then they're not going to be able to match that up to, here's the person who bought the stuff. So where to break the chain is one of the questions that we have to figure out. And for breaking this chain, we've got two kinds of tools that we can use. We can use technical tools or we can use legal tools. And they both have their advantages and disadvantages. Technical tools are usually lower effort, but they're shorter range. They can only deal with a surveillance technology that you directly have a connection to. Legal tools have the force of the law behind them, so they can reach out further. They can reach out to a company that has your information in a data center, even if you've never made an actual connection to that company. So breaking the chain and deciding when to use what kind of tools. And you've really got a bunch of opportunities to break the link. You can completely avoid doing the trackable activity. This is what happens when you uninstall an app. You can use a tool that prevents tracking info from being sent, and this is probably the most common because we're all installing some kind of browser extension that blocks tracking JavaScript from loading or from sharing or from saving state in a browser session. We can send tracking info, but don't link it to your real info. So this is what happens when you run an extension that churns your tracking cookie. You never build up a single set of tracking cookies that reflects your interest across multiple sites. This is also what happens when you use a single-purpose email address, like Firefox Relay. And then these last two are kind of the inner rings of defense once the others have all not been usable in that situation for whatever reason. One is do an immediate opt-out, and that's something you can do with global privacy control, which is a setting that's now legally enforced in the state of California. And then the final one is come back and either send an objection, a right to delete, or an opt-out after you've had the interaction with the company. So in general, the earlier you can deal with it, the less of a time suck it is. Yes, question. Please wait for the mic.
My question is really on that last point. It's about who to object to. I mean, these are somewhat hidden and I'll say nefarious interactions. Like, I may not know I've had an interaction with some marketing collecting group. How do I know to ask them to remove my data?
Yes, that's a big problem. In general, they know more about us than we know about them. But there are ways to find out where to send that. So please wait for, I think, 3 more slides, and then we'll have something to answer that question. All right, so if you do want to send an objection, or in this case, we're going to send a California CCPA letter. Well, this is something that we can automate fairly simply with just a shell script. And so I have a shell script on my system that's just called CCPA. So I can type CCPA privacy@example.com, fire off a CCPA to them. And I'm going to do a short shell scripting session now because I know we've been kind of high level and pointy clicky stuff. So let's dig into a quick shell script. So here, I say, where's my letter? It's in privacy docs, CCPA letter.md. It's just a regular markdown file. In this case, privacy docs is another project directory on my machine. I will send a link after this talk. And I'm going to make a temp file. I'm just going to do a make temp, and if that fails, exit the script. But this has actually never failed for me. All right. Now, this first non-comment line where I'm setting from equals egrep set from home.mutrc pipe cut minus d equals, that long shell pipeline is grepping for my from address from my mutt configuration and cutting out the value of the email address. So all I'm doing is a simple don't repeat yourself, use the same email address that's configured in your mailer. Now, I've got 3 environment variables. So in my bash RC, I can set my CCPA email, or I don't set my CCP email, that's from my mutt. In my bash RC, I can set my postal address and phone number for my CCPA letter. Now, I'm just going to write out a bunch of email headers to my temp file. So I'm going to put my from, subject, to, and the to is just the argument that I passed into the script. I'm going to do a get hash object on my CCPA letter. That way I have an email header that says exactly what letter I sent to which people. So it makes it convenient for me keeping track of legal stuff with get hash object. And then finally, I'm going to use the tail command to chop off the front matter from my letter, which again is in Markdown. And I'm going to pass it through Mo. And how many have heard of the command line tool Mo? Okay, real simple tool. It just does mustache templates from the command line. So mustache templates are like the curly bracket, and then the name of the variable, curly bracket. And you've probably seen something like it in web development. So in this case, I'm substituting in my personal information into this letter, and so it's all now in my temp file. And finally, I'm going to run mutt, and I'm going to pass it -e set signature, and that's just going to remove my regular email signature. I don't want to confuse them. And then -H is the mutt option to start with an already composed email. So open up mutt with my CCPA letter. It's already populated with my info. I just need to look at it and send it normally. So for me, CCPAing a company is like a 5-second process once I have their privacy policy open. So I see, okay, they're using privacy for their email address, CCPA, privacy@example.com, open it up, it's an email, yay, send it, bang, done. All right, any questions on the mutt stuff? And I'm going to warn you that if you do a CCPA opt-out or right to delete, very often the company will come back to you and say, thank you for your email, we don't read your email, please go to this web form. So when you get one of those, even if you've just sent the company a CCPA opt-out, like, don't sell my info. I'm fine doing business with you, don't sell my info. If they come back with an onerous process, then say, all right, fine, if you're going to make an opt-out just as hard as a right to know, then I'm going to do a full right to know. So escalate. If they make the basic privacy stuff hard, escalate it to the next level. If they make the web form too hard, then there's a page on the Attorney General's site that you can fill out. So what we're doing is we are training the decision makers to invest based realistically on the risks that they're coming up against. And the risk of making a CCPA process difficult is that it gets escalated one level from opt-out to right to know, or from right to know to letter to the AG. Okay, please wait for that.
What exactly is, when you say escalate to right to know, what exactly is that? Like, how does that work? Is that a process after you, I imagine it's a process after you send this initial letter.
Yeah, so you send them a nice email, say, do not sell my personal information. In a lot of cases, companies will write back and say, thank you for your email, we've conducted a diligent search of our records, we confirm we will never sell your personal information. Thumbs up, right? Very often, they will say, thank you for your email, we don't read your email, go fill out this complicated web form. And that complicated web form gives you a bunch of options, including regular opt-out and right to know, right to delete. So if they're going to put you through a complicated web form anyway, then send the whole right to know. A right to know costs them $1,400 to handle. Does that answer your question? All right. All right, so we had a previous question of, hey, how do we know which companies we need to send right to delete to? And I like to compare this one to a sampling well. So when there's a toxic waste site that they need to clean up, one of the first things that they do is they find a low point, they drill a well, and they take samples of the groundwater to analyze it. It's a sampling well. And just as a physical sampling well can help you discover what's going on a toxic waste site, there's a sampling well that will help you with toxic marketing practices. And that is called Facebook. So I know delete Facebook is the thing. All the kids are delete Facebook now, but I'm actually an internet graybeard, and I'm going to tell you to keep your Facebook account, and here's why. You can go to, let me get a drink of water before I read this. Select Settings and Privacy. Select Ads. Under Ad Preferences, select Ad Settings. We're getting close. Select Audience-Based Advertising. Now, scroll down and select See All Businesses. Buried treasure. Long list of companies doing surveillance marketing on you. And pretty much any company that does surveillance marketing is going to do some Facebook stuff. So by using this Facebook account that you decided to hang on to, you can find companies that are sending you info, or companies that are sending your info straight to the world's creepiest PHP programmer. All right, so let me go through this list. First one is a store that I actually bought something from, so got to deal with that. Second, this is the second one is a DTC retailer I've never heard of. Somebody probably sold them a spam CD or a list that was on a spam CD. Then there's a couple surveillance marketing companies. These are companies that handle data as an intermediary, passing it from someone else to Facebook. It's fine to send those a right to delete because them having your info is not going to help you in any way. And then finally, Talbot's. And that's a legit retailer. So I don't know what they're doing with my info. Probably another victim of an over-aggressive marketing department. Yes, wait for the mic, please.
So it seems like it's pretty much a guessing game to see which data brokers actually have your data. The problem is the way that the laws have been set up, right? And I know that the privacy agency for the state of California is trying to do something about it, but a lot of these data firms, data brokers, once they get your data, they have the right to sell your data to other third parties, and it's just basically a nonstop cycle, right? So it gets really hard to try to prevent these people from actually distributing your data.
Yes, that's why you that's why there are several measures you can take, and focus on the ones that break that surveillance marketing loop. So if you're looking at every possible company that transferred all your info to Facebook ever, it looks like an insurmountable task. But if you focus on the ones that appear to be the valuable points, you can start to break some of those connections. And really, once you get started with it and figure out a system, then it doesn't really take you that long, and it does have an impact and cause companies to make better choices. All right. Does that answer your question? Okay, thanks. All right, and so I just have to tell you, while you are on Facebook, do not click on any of the ads. All right, so, question.
Sorry, one more question. So along those lines, after you send them the, all these forms to like release to stop targeting you. Have you seen, like, how can we know that they actually did cease and desist, or, you know, stop tracking your preferences? And is there a way we can go back and, like, if we go back to whatever, this Facebook thing, and see that they're still, you know, targeting you, does that mean they're still there? Like, we have to start that process over?
They will eventually disappear. They will eventually disappear from that Facebook list. So come back every 6 months or so, look at your sent mail and say, hey, wait a minute, they're still there, even after I RTK'd and RTD'd them. The other way you can tell is the better your privacy measures are, the more totally crappy ads you will see. So if you start to get the miracle cure ointment or the can't miss cryptocurrency investment, you're on the right track.
Hi, I was just wondering if Instagram or Google has a similar list like Facebook does of groups, companies.
I don't know about Instagram versus Facebook. It's possible that the list that gets sent over to, or it's possible that the list on Facebook also includes stuff from Instagram. So I don't know on Instagram. I would have to do some research on that. I don't believe there's currently a Google list of all the companies that have dumped your info to Google. But there's actually a European law called the Digital Services Act that's going to require a lot more transparency from advertisers. And so I'm hoping to put together a follow-up talk on getting Estonian e-residency and exercising your rights under the Digital Services Act, because I am serious about driving the investments away from negative sum surveillance stuff and into product innovation and efficiency improvements. Nobody who's working on surveillance ads wants to be selling scams to old people forever. They want to build something fun. So let's help them out. Oh, we had another question over here.
Do you have any suggestions if you've never had Facebook?
If you've never had Facebook? Oh, okay. People who have never had Facebook, contact me after class, because there's a really big crime that Facebook has been doing lately, that if you have never had Facebook, you can catch them. All right, so I don't know if anybody. I should have said this. I should have said this earlier on, and that is, I do work for a company that does advertising services. So, Cafe Media is a company that runs the ads for 4,000 legit sites, and we have a strong interest, of course, in cleaning up the ad business. So that's my connection to work here. And so when I put in the proposal for this talk, I was thinking, ooh, am I going to have to say something about ad blockers? Because I work for an ad company. Can I say something about ad blockers? And the FBI saved me. The FBI put out this public service announcement saying, cyber criminals impersonating brands using search engine advertisement services to defraud users. So companies are going out, they're buying a domain that's similar to a legit domain, and then running Google ads and hoping that people will click on the Google ad for the fake domain. And Cory Doctorow did a big thread on Mastodon about this, about clicking on a restaurant site to order some food, and it turned out to be some scammer getting in between him and the real restaurant. So here's what the FBI has to say about ad blockers. This is not me saying anything about ad blockers.
have a question over here.
Yes.
I was at a local security conference in Arizona by somebody who was talking about the automated ad system that Google and other places use and how people put in money. And when somebody puts in something like the ad that tricked my mom into thinking she was hacked on Google Play on her iPad,
Yep.
and couldn't get a hold of any of us and called, I said, well, you know, until they clean that up, I'm not even going to consider turning off an ad blocker. And they said, well, that's not their problem. It's like, well, then we're going to keep using ad blockers. I mean,
Yeah.
and YouTube without an ad blocker, I never watch YouTube on my phone because I would destroy my phone.
Right, right, yes. That YouTube stack that I pointed out in my first two slides, that does have an option for blocking the YouTube ads. And since there are some YouTube ads that have some really questionable stuff in them regarding health and personal finance, and so I predict that the people who are running an ad blocker are going to be better off financially and health-wise in their retirement years. But I do have to warn everyone that ad blocking extensions are a wretched hive of scum and villainy. People who go and search for, quote, an ad blocker will get stuff that has adware built in, that has spyware built in. One person got a $50 a month subscription to their ad blocker. So there are some god-awful ad blockers out there. They are incredibly good at SEO. So never recommend to any web user that they go get an ad blocker. Get a trustworthy URL for an ad blocker that you know is legit, and give them the exact URL and watch them type it in, because there's some terrible ad blockers out there. Yes.
So I don't know if you remember Nano. So Nano used to be a reliable open source project that basically helped blocking malicious domains and, you know, ads. And then eventually what happened is the developer sold it to a third party, and that third party ended up basically using that software to steal people's information. So that does happen.
Yes, yes. There's a pervasive scam culture problem throughout all of society. And when any company tolerates a scam operation, then it makes things less trustworthy for all of us. So you go to these big companies and all the managers are trying to nail their OKRs, right? Nobody has an OKR for let our company not become a den of scams. And the scam culture problem, once you start seeing it, you're going to see it everywhere. OKR. All right. It's a complicated management thing that you need to understand if you ever want to buy a house in Mountain View. See me after class. All right. So I'm going to share my list of browser extensions. A lot of these are cross-browser. I am on Firefox, so I don't think any of them that aren't obviously Firefox are Firefox only. So clear URLs. This is a good one. It's a time saver, removes the little tracking parameters from URLs. Okay. Yep, okay. We are actually almost done here. So we've got cookie auto-delete. Cookie auto-delete is really handy if you click yes, I accept on a site, because sometimes when you click yes, I accept, in order to get the damn dialog box to go away so you can read the thing, then it'll set a cookie saying, aha, you're an acceptor type person. So cookie auto delete will get rid of that, and you can turn it off to allow it to persist, to allow sites that you do want to stay logged into to persist their cookies. It's a little bit time consuming, but I think it's worth it. Enhancer for YouTube, we covered that one. Facebook container, that just puts Facebook-owned sites into their own container like we did for YouTube. Yeah, it's real easy. Firefox multi-account containers, that's necessary to do our YouTube trick. NJS, turning off JavaScript is very often a good way to get around some of the growth hacking and requests for please type in your email address or please do this thing or this other thing. A lot of times the legit content for the site comes straight out of the CMS and then it's festooned with a bunch of JavaScript. So often you can turn off JavaScript for a site and it's better. Personal block list, not by Google. This is not exactly a privacy thing, but very often there are domains that are really good at growth hacking and coming up high in the search results for stuff like looking up CSS, which I always have to look up CSS. So being able to block the sites that are better at SEO than at actual content. Privacy Badger, this is a really good one because it's not only a blocker for tracking content, it will also send global privacy control. And global privacy control is a setting that companies in California are required to accept in your web traffic. So if you send a global privacy control when you buy something, then you should be opted out of your information being sold or shared. So once more retail sites actually implement this thing and follow the law, then the list of domains that are showing up in your Facebook settings are going to be dramatically lower. There's going to be a lot less sharing of your personal information going on with your global privacy control telling companies not to do it anymore. So I strongly recommend installing that one. Even if you have a conventional ad blocker that you like, Privacy Badger is an extra win. And then Recap, I just put that on there because it's a tool for sharing legal documents. So if you're reading up on the latest privacy cases, then sometimes you end up at a document in the court system that you're supposed to pay 20 cents a page for. But if another reader has been there before you, then you can read a free copy. If you, as a Recap user, decide to get some of your $10 of free legal documents that you're entitled to, then Recap will help you share it to other people who might be interested in the same cases. And so there's a lot of interesting stuff to keep up on in privacy cases. So I kind of include Recap as a privacy tool. All right, and authorized agent services. This is not really a privacy tool. It's a service you can sign up for. It does a lot of the opt-outs and right to deletes for you. The furthest one along is probably Consumer Reports Permission Slip, which I've worked on as a researcher in the initial process that fed into it. There's also a company called Incogni. This is really an area where there's a lot of innovation, kind of authorized agent services going back and forth with the companies that are replying to opt-outs. So it's rapidly changing, and your results are likely to get better over time. There is a company called Say Mine or Mine is the name of the company, Say Mine is their domain. That's a related approach, but they automate sending emails. They're not actually an authorized agent. And sometimes you get your information back by next day air. All right, So, in conclusion, privacy stuff is getting better. We have the levers to move to shift investment away from corporate surveillance and into positive areas. The internet freedom scene has beaten the key escrow mandate, beaten the DRM mandate. So that's two much larger, scarier dystopias. The surveillance dystopia is, by comparison, a lot smaller, and I think we're on track to beat this one too. There's only one thing that can stop us, and that is what happens if the people who do click on the Facebook ads buy all the smart pills. All right, thank you.
Does the Privacy Badger add-on, is that duplicated now by Firefox's do not track and all the settings that they implement?
Firefox has built-in global privacy control, but they do not have the UX to find it and turn it on in Firefox preferences. So if you go to About config, you should be able to find global privacy control and turn it on.
So you said that all this information would be available on your website?
Yes, yes. I will share a link with the Scale people, and there should be a link to notes with links.
So where would it be available?
Say again?
Where would that be available?
Go to Scale, where they put the Scale videos.
Did you get a response from the California Privacy Agency when you sent them a request or a complaint?
I have sent them some stuff, and I've gotten different levels of response back about different things. Yeah, so I have not actually gotten a company busted.
So in regards to companies respecting your privacy, does that only apply for California residents, or is it really just based on these companies having to be based in California in order to be able to follow these regulations? Okay. They have to follow CCPA.
Yeah.
What about on an international scale? So what about on an international scale? Like, let's say, some of these companies are in Europe that are tracking your information.
Yeah, if a company is based in Europe, then they should have to follow the European privacy laws, which are completely different from California's, better in some ways, worse in others. So I do have a combo letter, California, Europe, that you can use, and I'll put the link in the notes.